Welcome to Stories for Wonderful Children. I'm Dan Wendelin, your host and storyteller. Years ago, I began recording the bedtime stories I told my children every night. Now, we would like to share those stories with you. I hope you enjoy my Stories for Wonderful Children.
Once there was a shoemaker named Sally, and Sally made special shoes. Each pair that Sally made after she had made them to the size of the person who had ordered them, and made them the color the person had ordered them, and made them the style that the person had ordered them.
What did she do?
She would then put on the enchantment that the person had ordered. Some shoes she made to go very fast. Some shoes she made to help have a prince fall in love, like the glass slippers that Cinderella's fairy godmother gave her. Sally made those. And Dorothy's silver slippers that she tapped together to go home. Sally made those. Well, sometimes Sally would work on an extra special pair of shoes. These shoes Sally was not making for anyone. She was just making them to challenge herself, to see how difficult and beautiful a thing she could make. Her current project she had worked on for 4 years. Now, you may wonder how long it took Sally to normally make a pair of shoes. It usually took her about 4 hours. Particularly difficult projects might sometimes take as long as 4 days. These shoes that Sally was making were a beautiful bright blue color, and they were enchanted to sparkle and shine and shimmer, and they had several special magical powers. The person who was wearing them could go very fast, and the person who was wearing them could, if they stood very still, the shoes would root themselves into the ground so that the person became very difficult to move. And they were shoes that could change color if the owner wanted them to, and they were shoes that would change color if they were in the presence of another kind of magic. And their final power, the thing that made them perhaps most powerful, was that if you were wearing the shoes and you thought of no color at all, well, then the shoes would lose all their color and disappear, and you would disappear right along with them. Well, one day Sally came into her shop and made a terrible discovery. She discovered that the lock on her door had been broken open, and when she went in, she did not at first think that anything had been stolen, and then she realized that it was her very special shoe project that had been missing, that had been taken. And over the next few months, Sally heard things about mysterious robberies, where the robber had never been seen, but had clearly just walked right into a castle and taken a crown or important gems, had walked into a bank and stolen the money that people were saving there, had walked into a grocery store and walked off with food. Well, Sally felt simply terrible. She knew that someone was using her special enchanted shoes to do evil things. And so, for that reason, Sally began a new project. Her new project, the shoes, were even more beautiful than the last pair. They were red, and they gleamed, and Sally worked long and hard to work the magic into them, these shoes could go very fast, and they could fly, and most importantly, they had little tiny lights at the tip of each shoe, and if the wearer turned on those lights, they could see anyone, even someone who was invisible, like the thief who had stolen her last special shoes. Sally waited until she was almost done, and then she called up someone. The shoes by themselves would be no good, and she did not want to let them sit around again, lest they be stolen. So she called a friend. Ring.
Who was it?
Ring. Hello? Sally said, yes. Is Winella home? In just a second, I'll get her. Yes? Winella, this is Sally. Remember I made you that new pair of Sunday shoes? The black patent shoes that no matter what happens, they never get scuffs or marks on them or need polished? Winella said, oh yeah. Good to hear from you, Sally. What's up? Sally said, I've made a new pair of shoes, Winella, and I'd like you to have them. Winella said, all right. Thanks. I'll be right over. And just a few minutes later, Winella walked into her shop. Sally measured her feet to make sure she would fit the new special shoes, and then after she had put them on, and Winella had tried them out once by running around and around the house, Sally told her all about how this was the second pair of shoes, and the first pair of shoes was being used to do bad things by someone who had stolen it. Winella said that it would be a great honor to wear the second pair of shoes. And Sally said, well, they're finished, she said. And she told her about the enchantments and about how she could go fast and how she could fly and how she could turn on the little lights to see someone who is invisible. And Sally said, I've put a couple other enchantments in there that I've never tried before, and so I don't know if they'll work. What are they? Said Winella. And Sally said, well, if you need them, they might perhaps work. You'll just have to see. She said, now, the last bank that was robbed was over in Groversville. And that was a week ago. So you might want to try the towns around Groversville. And so Winella said, sure, I'm going to try these new shoes out. So she dashed off. And as soon as she was out on the street, she was running, but she was running up in the air above the cars and was quickly out of sight. It did not take her long to arrive in Groversville and talk there to one of Sally's suspects, a dentist. The man said that he had not seen anything like what Winella described as the shoes. And so Winella went on to the next city, Tell City. And as she was dashing into Tell City, she heard a police siren, and she looked back and she saw the police car headed towards the bank, and she thought, aha, maybe this is it. So she dashed to the bank and she turned on her lights, and the lights shone, and she saw someone. She saw someone, and she ran towards them, and that person, and it looked to her like a woman who was just a little older than Winella, a very young woman, turned with the money and ran. Winella ran after her, and they both went very fast, but Winella slowly began to catch her, and the woman turned and she tried to hit Winella with one of the bags of money, and Winella skidded to a stop and said, and when she said, this force field popped up out of her shoes all around her, and when the bag hit the force field, it just burst open and money flew all over the place, and the woman turned again to run, and Winella stomped her foot and said, stop. And when she stomped her foot, another of the hidden enchantments on the shoes kicked in, and her stomp made the sidewalk crack right underneath the woman, and she lost her balance, and Winella leapt at her, and quickly, before the woman could get up, Winella reached down and pulled the woman's shoes off, and then there she was, and everyone could see her, and she wasn't fast, and the police arrived and took her away to jail. and they thanked Winella very much, and Winella said, "Oh, you're welcome." And then she took the shoes, and she took both those shoes and her shoes back to Sally, and she said, "Those are great shoes, Sally. Do you think I could use them again sometime?" And Sally said, "Sure. If you have a time when you need special shoes in order to do something, you let me know, and you can use either one of these pairs." And Winella said, I think that probably I can already think of a time when I'm going to need shoes like these. When that time comes, I'll be in touch." And Sally said, "Okay, Winella." She said, "Before you go, you want a brownie?" Winella said, "Sure." And she took a brownie, and then she walked back through town to the Cat's Paw Highway.
No way, my
and went back to
tummy.
her.
Thanks for listening to Stories for Wonderful Children. I created today's story, but questions and witty commentary were supplied by my children. The music was created by Brandon Thompson. If you enjoy the show, please tell someone about it or leave a review on your podcast provider. Our website is storiesforwonderfulchildren.com, and you can also find us on most social media. I'm Dan Wendelin, reminding you to tell someone you love a story.